So this is a journey that started last year, and it still continues, though not as strenuous as it was in the past. Here's the agenda that we're going to cover. Basically, our goals for the presentation. We're going to share with you, how we embarked on this journey, and all the lessons that were learned along the way. We'll give you an intro into recovery of your hardware and software, and then we'll go into sort of how do you figure out your backup strategy, your evaluation of your own sort of station or PC that you'd love to back up, and then how do you plan to do that. And then after that, we'll go into the software that we use to do the backups. And we're going to give you, essentially, we decided to do a video. Instead of talking to a PowerPoint, we actually have hired some models from the software company. There were two of them that did the presentation, and you'll get to meet them and see what they were up to. But anyway, it was, we'll show how to create essentially what's called a rescue media, and I'll talk about what that is. And so anyway, there'll be several videos along the way, basically showing you how to save your machine and be prepared for any possible failure. And as a bonus, Sam decided that we should cover these Wemo devices, and we'll show you how to do that, as well as all the uses for it, and then followed up with a question and answer. All right, so what are we not going to cover? Basically, this is just a very, very simplified approach to disaster recovery. Basically, Sam lost his PC, unfortunately, and this is basically, a journey, our personal journey, if you wish, on what we had to do to get him back up and running. But we won't cover all the methods and strategies of disaster recovery. We're just basically going to focus on what we did with the eye of keeping it super simple. And honestly, I think by the end of this presentation, you guys are going to be able to do your own sort of backup of your PCs, and in case there's an eventual failure. There's devices called network attached storages that basically are hard drives that sit on the network. We're not going to talk about those. There's also online backup options. There's software companies that basically you can back up to the cloud. We're not going to talk about those, or any other comprehensive recovery strategies or other software applications. So this is really just about our approach to getting Sam up and running. Again, the goals are going to be sharing with you the costs of not being prepared if your computer fails, and we're going to provide you the minimum required tools to get your PC back up and running. And the real focus was keep it simple, stupid. And that's really kind of the gist of this presentation. But as you can see, or at the end, it's extremely powerful. Sam, do you want to talk about how the journey began?
Okay. The journey started off very simply, I thought. My number 2 monitor failed, and so I went to our local computer store, purchased a new monitor, installed it, turned it on, and I noticed that the screen wasn't as bright as my old screen alongside of it. So not having any installation instructions on how to adjust the intensity of the visual, I decided to get on the internet and Google the particular monitor, model number, and for a manual, which I did, and the screen came up with about 3 different items, and the first one said exactly what I was looking for: the monitor name, model number and manual. So I clicked on it. And that's when the fit hit the shan, because right across the screen that came up was a bright yellow bar. And in that yellow bar, I can't remember the exact words, but it said basically that I had been attacked by a Trojan malware, to not turn off the computer or I would lose everything, and that I could be assisted for help and to contact a phone number listed. Well, the first thing I tried to do was turn off the program. Everything was locked up. So I decided I'd make the phone call and see what it was going to cost me and what was going to take place. I made the call, and a young man answered. He said he was with a security company. He could help me out and get it all squared away for a modest cost. And I said, what kind of modest cost? He said, well, I have to look in your computer and figure out how bad it is, and then we can decide on what it's going to take to repair it and provide a cost. He said, have you got TeamViewer? I said, yes. He said, well, if you'll let me get it, connect up with your TeamViewer, we'll take a look. So I did. And the next thing I knew was my computer started downloading, and I could see it just swirling out of there, all that data going. And I said, hey, I thought you were just going to look in my computer and try to solve the problem. He said, well, we got to remove all the stuff from it in order to be able to piece it together. I said, that's not going to happen. And I hung up on him and unplugged the computer. When I plugged it back in, there was nothing. So I contacted my daughter, who I knew had a similar problem, and she had worked with some computer specialists, and they in turn fixed her up. So I got the number, called the guy. It was a Saturday. He in turn said I'd be out tomorrow, which was Sunday, which surprised me. He came out, looked at the problem. He said, I think I can fix it for you, but I'll have to take it into the office. What do you want me to save if I can? I said, my pictures and my documents. He said, I'll see what I can do. 2 days later, it was back, and of course, all I had was Windows 10. All my apps were gone. All my ham radio programs were gone. But I did have my pictures and my documents. He was able to save those. Well, it took a couple of weeks to reload everything and get the computer at reasonable shape, because at least I made a bunch of screenshots so that I could repair some of the ham programs, and I saved my logs and what have you.
So I guess the important thing for all of you is, if you don't have backups, the couple really smart things that Sam did was, on all of his applications, he took snapshots using the snippet tool that comes with Windows to save all of his configurations of, DX Keeper, MMTTY. So he had those to be able to to restore it. But basically, it's starting from ground zero. And honestly, Sam's being somewhat modest, because I think 2 months later, we were still working on things that didn't quite, the last 5% or 10% of the effort was just trying to get everything up and running. But you're right. I think in 2 or 3 weeks, we were able to at least get your radio station to log again. All right, so you guys can read this. I don't need to read it for you, but the one lucky thing that Sam had was that his photographs, lifetime of his wife, Betty, was on a D drive. And so he did not lose that. The software had not started encrypting that drive. And so he was able to recover the photographs, of which are honestly priceless because it's a lifetime of photographs. So that's just sort of, how we started this journey. And, it's food for thought for all of you in terms of what you have on your computers and what you need to save. Again, in terms of lesson learned, Sam, do you want to talk about that? Or, it's...
Yes, in sharing the lessons learned, immediately power down the PC, pull the plug or whatever. And if you don't have a backup available, seek professional help to salvage whatever isn't encrypted or damaged. Prepare yourself for a long and arduous task of restoring and rebuilding your PC, as I well found out. Realize the possibility of never being able to restore your data, some of which might be priceless. With a recent backup available, simply restore the backup and you'll be operational in a matter of minutes or at the most a couple of hours.
So that's why we decided to, for you guys, start now. What we're going to show you, you will be able to restore your PC for under the cost of a Benjamin, $100, and avoid pretty much all this aggravation. So, and it's significantly less than $100, but there's lots of things that you can do, and we'll share, the different price points along the way as to what you can do to recover your hardware. So I just want to cover a little bit about hard drive basics. It's obviously, you guys know what a hard drive is. Most of us running Windows have a C drive. Your drives come in different sizes and speeds, read-write speeds, and it's typically compartmentalized or partitioned. This is a copy of my, I went into Disk Manager, and this is a copy of my system at home, my shack computer, which is also my office computer. As you can see here, is my local C drive. It's a 2 terabyte SSD drive. It's partitioned. There's this is done by Microsoft, the operating system itself. It's got a recovery partition of about 530 megabytes. And I'm not sure what this system partition is, but not important. This is my boot drive. This is my Windows operating system. These are all of my applications living on the C drive. I've also got a 10 terabyte storage drive that I save photographs to. I save some of my backup information into this local storage drive. It's just, it doesn't change very often, but it's just data storage when needed. Here are examples of hard drives. To the left here is the Samsung solid state drive. As you can see my mouse going around. No moving parts. It's super fast with read-write speeds. It's the most expensive, but yet it's the most reliable because there are essentially no moving parts whatsoever. Most of the fast computers these days, my 2 terabytes are solid state drives, extremely reliable. Next is the spinning platter that we were all familiar with long ago. They're still made today. My 10 terabyte drive is a platter drive. It spins at about 7,200 revolutions per minute. It's got okay read-write speeds. This is an old platter drive, but still in use today, and it's got a super price. I think a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte platter is in the $40 range. And this is a thumb drive. You guys are all familiar with these. They're the slowest read-write speeds, and they're a very, very cheap solution, but they'll come in handy as we'll show in the presentation. So a couple things I want to point out. There's a lot of words here. You guys can read it, but the most important thing is to understand the difference between a clone and an image backup. So think of Dolly the sheep, I guess. They cloned Dolly, and there were two sheep that basically you couldn't tell the difference. And we have that same terminology here in the backup recovery business, where you can clone your operating system, your C drive in Windows traditionally, to another drive that is the same size or larger. And it's a bit for bit copy, an exact duplicate of your operating system. So what this means is if you clone a hard drive right now and you wait till it's done, you clone your C drive, you can open up your PC, replace the drive that's currently in there that contains your Windows operating system, power it back up, and you will have the exact duplicate of what you had before. That is a clone. It's an exact copy of a hard drive that is currently in your machine. The other terminology that we're going to use, it's called an image backup. And what an image backup is it creates an image or a snapshot of, say, your C drive, but it's not an exact copy. Think of an image backup as a file, if you wish, like a normal file that you'll see in Windows File Explorer. But the beauty of an image backup is you can essentially have multiple images on a hard drive. So in case of my storage drive, I could have 8 images, or, you know, I'm just picking 8 out of the air. I could have 8 images of my C drive taken on different days, weeks, or months. And so that is really the difference between a backup, an image backup, and a clone. A clone is basically identical. You cannot have more than one clone on a drive, but you can have multiple image backups on a hard drive. And so that is sort of the terminology that it's important to remember, because we'll use that going forward. So this is all that you need to basically save your PC. You need backup software, and we'll introduce you to the company that we use, the software that we use to do backups. You need a rescue media. And what the rescue media is typically a USB stick or a CD or DVD disc that basically contains a very shrunk down version of Windows. It basically gives you a bare bones Windows operating system, as well as the backup software on a bootable stick or a drive. With a rescue media, you can try to repair your operating system if there's been a crash, or you could basically boot off of this disk, have a bare bones Windows operating system. It includes all the device drivers for your machine, your display drivers, gives you internet connectivity, has your Wi-Fi drivers, as well as a full copy of the software used for backup. And that's what a rescue media is. The size, we were able, I think on Sam's machine, we did a rescue, you know, basically we put Windows, we did a rescue media on a USB stick, and I think the thing was less than 1 gigabyte in size. So a simple 4 gigabyte USB stick is enough to essentially get you back up and running with a bare bones Windows system with the software installed. The other thing that you're going to need is you're going to need a backup of your operating system. And a clone is an identical copy, an exact replica of, say, your C drive or your D drive or any drive that you want to pick. Or you can do image backups, which copies the data to another drive, but you can have multiple copies of it. This is really good, for example, if you want to save the last 2 weeks of your operating system, you can easily just do image backups every day onto another drive. And if you had to restore any of those images, you can basically pick one and restore it back and basically recover your entire PC. So this, I wanted to show you guys what the backup software we use. It's called Macrium Reflect. It's version 8. And guess what? It's free. Here is the link to download Macrium. You can pay for this software. I think it's $70 or $75. I paid for it. It provides ransomware protection. So for example, if Sam had a working copy of a paid copy, Macrium, on his machine, that ransomware Trojan would not have been able to encrypt his drive because Macrium has a program called Guardian that runs and basically says, no, don't touch these files. This is the operating system. So it offers a level of protection just by owning it. The free version does not have that feature. The other thing that the paid version has is it allows faster creations of your backups. So in my case, in my paid version, it takes about 7 minutes to do a clone of my C drive, whereas in the unpaid version, it's closer to 28 minutes. So there's some advantages of owning it. For me, the $70 was worth it. The other thing you're going to need is you're going to need your rescue media, which is a typical USB stick. Take a look at the one that I have here. It's $10 for 64 gigs. So I have one of these. You need to use the backup software, the Macrium Reflect, to create the rescue media. And basically that'll put your Windows OS, a bare bones Windows OS, as well as Macrium on this to allow you to at least recover back to a working Windows operating system. The other thing you're going to need is a disk cradle. They come in different flavors, different sizes. This is the one that Sam and I purchased. It's got basically a dual cradle, if you wish, for different sizes of drives. This is a solid state drive. It takes a 2.5-inch drive as well as a 3.5-inch drive. So both Sam and I have a solid state drive for our clones of our operating system. So in case something happens, we can just replace directly just replace the drive in the machine and not skip a beat. The platter drives are very nice because it stores a ton of data. So I can save multiple copies of all of my hard drives onto, say, a 10 terabyte drive. So a 10 terabyte drive is about $220. A 2 terabyte drive is $46. The cradle itself, it's a high-speed USB. It runs you about $38. So at a minimum, you can get a $10 USB stick, a cradle, and a 10 terabyte drive, or a 2 terabyte drive, and clone your operating system, and you're back in business. So at a minimum, it's relatively inexpensive to save your PC. And so this is what we're going to do and cover to get you guys started on how to determine the sizing and everything else that you need. So in terms of the strategy, these are the questions that you need to ask yourself. How important is your data? That'll help you determine how often you need to do backups. It'll determine how many backup copies that you need to make. How often is your data changing? That'll also help you determine how many backups. For example, Sam has a storage drive like I do. I think his is a 2 terabyte or a 4 terabyte storage drive with all of his photographs. Well, those don't change very often. So Sam could probably get away with backing up his machine, his storage drive, maybe once a week because it doesn't change very often. But his C drive, where he has his computer logs, his ham radio logs that change every day, he might want to back that up every day. So those are sort of the questions that you need to ask yourself as to how often do you need to run these backups. The other thing that's important is how critical does the PC need to be back in a full operation? In Sam's case, when his PC went down, he could no longer do any ham radio because he uses all his logging software is electronic, right? So for most of us, if it's your shop computer, you want to get it back operational really quickly. And the last question is, how much data do you need? How big a hard drive do you need to purchase so that you can maintain multiple copies of the data? So How do you determine what you have in your PC? This is an example, very simple example I used Windows File Explorer. You guys are familiar with that. And this is of my machine at home. So the green circle here is my local operating system, the C drive. And sort of the yellow is my local storage drive. It's my 10 terabyte drive that's in my machine. So I basically have 2 hard drives in my machine. This is a solid state drive. The D drive is a platter drive. And then this is just a USB stick, which isn't not that important. This is where my DX Keeper logs get backed up to. This is my local C drive, as you can see here. What's important is it's a 2 terabyte drive, but I'm only using 150 gigs of it. So that's all of my applications, that's Office, that's all of my ham radio apps. Everything that I have on my computer only takes about 150 gigs. On my storage drive, on the other hand, the 10 terabyte drive, I'm using about 2 terabytes of it. It's photographs from many years ago. It's all of my backups. And so I'm using, 20-25% of my storage. So given all of that, we did an evaluation of Sam's computer in terms of what he had. He had a 1 terabyte operating system, SSD drive, and I think he had a storage drive that's about 4 terabytes internal to his computer, of which he used about 150 gigs as well, and he only used about 750 gigs of his storage drive. Sam's case, his operating system, he had his shack logs and documents. Those were very important. But his storage hard drive, which contains a lifetime of his family photographs, we view that as being critical. How often does his data change? His operating system changed daily, yet his storage drive did not change very often. How critical was that his PC get back to full operation? He wanted his OS being critical, but getting back his pictures, not that critical in terms of getting it up immediately. So then in Sam's evaluation, it became very important that if his operating system was critical, remember when I talked about clones, the clones are an identical copy of his hard drive. So what we decided to do for Sam is that he clones his operating system every day. I don't remember what time it ran, but I think he runs at maybe 9 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. But Sam's basically clones his operating system every day. And that clone is an external hard drive that basically mirrors his internal operating system and apps, his C drive. And then he's also going to clone or do an image backup of his storage drive, both his storage drive and operating system drives, to an external storage device once a week. And he's keeping the last 8 images on his external storage drive. So this is what we decided to do for Sam. We created a rescue media on a USB stick immediately. All of you guys can do that. And you should update this, I'd say yearly, because on a Windows 10 machine that went to a Windows 11, you want sort of the latest operating system installed. And therefore, maybe you do this once a year. But this is your bare bones Windows operating system, as well as Macrium software to be able to restore your computer. So in Sam's needs, in terms of his hardware, we got him a 128 gig USB stick. We bought him the Cradle for $38. And we picked up a clone solid state drive to clone his operating system, as well as an external drive. Originally, we were going to get him a 10 terabyte drive, but for $2 or $3 more, we could get a 12 terabyte. So we decided, what the heck, let's get him a hard drive. This is the software we use, and I'm going to kind of walk you through Macrium at a very, very high level, an overview. This is the home page. I hope you guys can see this okay. It's kind of busy, but we'll walk you through it. So this is when you fire up Macrium, this is what you see originally, or you see immediately. This button here is how to create a rescue media. This button over here that says updates, I hope you can see my mouse. This is where you check for newer versions of Macrium. This morning or yesterday, I clicked this button on Sam's machine. He was running version 7. Macrium said, oh, there's a newer version 8. He got an update and updated his machine. This homepage is where you create backups. And this tab here that shows all the local disks, this is my machine. This is my local storage drive, my 10 terabyte drive. These are the partitions that exist on my machine at home. The main C drive right here where it says local OS has 4 partitions. Not that it matters, but the disk is partitioned into 4 different segments. And this down here is just my a USB stick, removable, not that important. So that's what the home page looks like. This, I wanted to, again, you're at the home page, but what I did was I went to this tab over here called Schedule Backups. What I wanted to show you guys, on my machine, I clone my operating system right here. I've created a schedule. I clone my operating system at 5:05 every morning, starting at 10:17 of last year. And it runs, the next time it's going to run is on 11/12 of 22 at 5:05. The last time it ran was the day prior, and the last result was it's successful. So I successfully created a clone yesterday. This other backup down here is I imaged my local operating system to the local storage drive. It runs at 2:05 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of every week. And again, it was successful and it ran yesterday. And I have yet another scheduled backup where I do a full backup of my local storage drive to the external drive. And that runs at 5:06 on Sundays once a week. And so that is sort of, there's a tab here to show all of your scheduled backups that you've created. This other tab here called Existing Backups shows all of the backups that you have available to you. And in this case, I've got 8 backups of my local operating system that I keep. So it basically keeps a week's worth of snapshots of my C drive, if you wish. The other tab that I wanted to show you called Logs, this screen basically keeps track of all of your operations, your backups, your images, your clones. For example, in this case, I did a clone yesterday and it took 5 minutes and 39 seconds to clone my entire C drive. Okay, and so this basically is a page that you can see all of your successful or failures of your backups as they run. And here is the Macrium expert that we hired to show you guys how simple it is to create a rescue media. So without further ado, I'm going to play this. This is our handsome actor from that will teach you guys how to create a rescue media using Macrium.
Welcome everybody. This is Sam, WC7Q. Say hi, Sam. And so Sam and I are going to show you guys how to build a rescue media using a compact flash that we just bought. Sam, you want to show them what we got? Hold it up. So we just picked up a 64 gigabyte USB 3 flash drive, and Sam was so kind enough to install it on his computer, and I'll show you where it's at. It's this little red thing here that says SanDisk. So Sam, why don't you fire up Macrium and let's show our guests how to create a rescue media. And the rescue media will allow you to basically rescue your PC in case it crashes. There we go. And so what Sam is going to do is Sam is going to click on rescue, which is that button up in the top left. And he's going to select the K drive, which is the flash drive we just inserted. And then make sure that these two checkboxes down below for adding missing device drivers and the multi-boot is checked, and then just click build. And basically this is only to be used for personal non-commercial use. So go ahead and click that, Sam, say okay. And now the Macrium Rescue Builder is building the rescue media. And so basically what this will do is it will build a very, very minimalistic Windows operating system with all the drivers required, all the Wi-Fi support required, as well as installing a full version of Macrium on this rescue media. It needs about 1 gigabyte total, so we could have gotten away with the 32 gig or smaller compact flash, but the 64 was all that we had available, so we're using that. And I want to just basically show you how little time it takes to build this. I think we calculated about 3 minutes and for this thing to completely build a rescue media. So again, what this is going to allow is that you'll be able to boot off of this stick and install Windows, a bare bones Windows operating system, as well as Macrium. And so it's still sort of figuring out what it needs to build. And now it's copying the files onto the USB stick. Notice it needs about 700 megabytes and that's it. So a 1 gigabyte stick is all you need to do in order to rescue your PC. And that's it. Click OK, and we can now remove the media.
All right. Do you guys see how easy that is? Anyway, so that is basically what you need to do in case your C drive no longer works. You can try to repair it with the rescue media. If that doesn't work, you can just reinstall Windows onto the machine. The next step that we are going to do is we are now going to create a clone. And what a clone does is that if, for example, your PC died, your hard drive failed, or in this case, the ransomware guys encrypted your drive, you could just, if you had a recent clone, you can essentially plug that into your PC and power up Windows as if it was, the same copy, the identical copy of your C drive. And so Sam is going to show us how to create a clone. And here Sam is to tell you all about it.
Sam is going to show you guys how a clone is done. He's going to clone his operating system and then basically save it to the SSD drive that you see over in the distance there. So let's get started, Sam. Let's go to local disk, select your C drive, and say clone. And so there's the clone button right there. He's clicked clone. So another window pops up and basically says, this is the source that you're going to clone. So this is his local internal operating system, his C drive in his machine. And now he's got to select a destination. So click destination. And we are going to copy it to the Sabrent 2 terabyte SSD. Select that. Just click there, anywhere. All right, so now he's copying it. He's cloning his C drive to his D drive. And so we just hit next. At this point, it's asking about a schedule. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a schedule. And let's just give you guys a little idea of what it is. You can back up on a monthly schedule. You can basically select either the first, second, third, or fourth Monday or whatever day. You can pick the months that you'd like to back up over here. You can pick a start time and an end time. And you can also do that for a weekly schedule. And if you select you want to do it on a weekly schedule, you can pick the days, you can pick every other week, 1 through 4. Start times, you can select as well as a date. But in this case, we're going to clone Sam's operating system every day. So he's selected every day. We're going to select the hours so that let's do it at 3 in the morning, Sam. So it's 3 in the morning, and then we're going to do 00, so go up. All right, so at 3 in the morning, starting as of today. So just go ahead and say okay. And then what we want to do is next. So basically it's giving you a clone summary of the C drive, which is the source, to the destination. You can hit finish. Let's give it a name, Sam, of the schedule. We'll just call it presentation clone. Looks good, say okay. And there you go. So what's happening now is it's giving him a warning. Do you really want to overwrite the data on the D drive? You click that, say yes, I want to overwrite it, continue, and there, the clone has started. So that is how easy it is to clone your C drive and set up a schedule. And so what it's doing now is it's figuring out what needs to be done. It's getting all the records, and the operation has started. And what I want to show you over here is, here's the destination drive, and you can see the blue light blinking. And so basically data is being overwritten. So what this operation is doing is it's making an identical copy of his Windows operating system, basically overwriting the data on this SSD drive. And it's set to run at 3 o'clock every morning, every day. So we'll come back. It's going to take about 28 minutes. We're about 2% complete at this point, and it's going to take about 28 minutes. So Sam and I are going to have some tea, and we'll be back just before the end of the clone operation. See you soon. All right, we're back again. We are almost at 99%. Let me focus on this. So we're at 99%. It's almost done. And there we go. It is getting very, very close. And there it is. It's getting close to being done. And that's it. You see the clone completed in 28 minutes. It's very, very consistent. Macrium posted a message basically saying that it was done. So go ahead and close that out. And it's completed. You've got a perfect clone. And so that's pretty much it for now. You guys now know how to do clones.
Basically what that does is, Sam, if anything happened, we could basically open up his computer, take that SSD drive that's in the cradle, and plug it into his machine. Sam and I will show you what we do to disconnect it automatically later in the presentation. But Dan's point is well taken in the sense that these, like the ransomware, will encrypt any drive that is attached to your machine. So if you have your SSD drive connected via USB and you get hit with a ransomware attack, it will see that you've got a drive connected to your machine, and it will also encrypt that as well. So it is absolutely important to disconnect your drives from the computer. I'll show you how to do that. Very simple to do, and it's done automatically. The other point that you raise is really, really important. So I've got a friend of mine that does a weekly clone of his machine. And what he does is he has 2 drives, 2 SSD drives. He clones his machine on a Sunday. When it's done, he basically moves it into his safe, fireproof safe in his house. He then takes the older SSD drive and then puts it back into his cradle. And so basically he's always got at least one clone at another location. This is the advantages of, say, I didn't want to talk about this, but this is the one advantage of having a networked attached storage, in that it is not directly connected to your PC. And then there's also the online solutions where you can basically save your information, but obviously you can't save a clone. The nice thing about the clone is it's a physical device. If anything happens to your computer, you just open it up, plug it in, and you are off and running. But excellent point, Dan. And those are things that you need to think about. It might be worthwhile to get, a couple hard drives that you can clone and then save one in a safe and then just sort of rotate through them. But now we're going to cover how to do image backups, where you can do multiple copies of, say, your operating system, once a week, and store, 12 copies of it. So here.
All right, Sam is going to show us how to do an image of his C drive. We've already got Macrium up and running. You guys have seen this already. Here's Sam's C drive. And instead of hitting clone to clone the disk, we're going to say we're going to image this disk. So go ahead and click image. Up pops a window. It basically says we're going to image the C drive, and we're going to essentially store it in the Macrium backup folder, which is the M drive, and that's his 12 terabyte drive over here. So let's hit next. We're going to add a schedule. If you guys want to take a look at this, we're going to add a schedule. We're going to do a full backup. And you've seen this before, where you can do weekly, monthly, whatever. That's very, very consistent, but we're going to do a weekly. And Sam, let's say we want to do Sunday. So just every Sunday, uncheck Monday, check Sunday. Let's do it at 2 in the morning. So select that, go down. Hopefully you guys can see all that. That's 2 in the morning. There you go. And let's just get started. That looks good. All right. So now what we're going to do is, it's basically, it's going to do a full backup at 2 o'clock every Sunday of every week starting at today. And what we're going to do is we want to uncheck differential, because we don't want a differential. We just want to do a full. And let's keep the last 8 backups. It says 12 right now. You want to go down to 8. So we'll keep 2 months worth of backups, 1 every week. And there's another checkbox again down here that says run the purge before the backup starts. What we're going to do is we're going to leave it unchecked, because we want to make sure that the backup is successful before we delete an older one. And I think that all looks good. So let's say next. And there, it's basically the summary of all the stuff that's going to happen. It's basically going to do a backup it's going to do a full backup, 2 a.m. every Sunday of every week, starting with today. And it retains 8 full images. So this thing, when it hits the 9th backup, it'll delete, when it's complete, it'll delete the oldest and always keep 8. And that's about it. And then basically we'll hit finish. But and it's again very much like the same pop-up that you saw before on the clone process. But we won't do this because it's basically a 3-hour operation and there's no point. Here you would basically put a name. For example, it'll be presentation backup of C drive, and then hit OK. And this basically will be automated and just continue to run. So I think we can cancel out of this for now, Sam. Folks basically now know how to do images and schedule them. It's that simple.
This version, the one thing that I didn't show you is at the very start of that screen, there was a thing that said template. Excuse me. There is a thing that said templates. And so this program actually has a very sophisticated, it allows you to just select a template and it will just follow that. It'll do like a full backup once a week, and it'll do incrementals and differentials, which minimizes the amount of data that's required to basically restore a PC. But it's not that important for our needs. You guys can sort of learn more as you go through this process. But really, you guys have essentially the knowledge to be able to do your backup. What I wanted to show you is if you needed to restore a backup, here's how you would do it. I did it earlier today, but I didn't want to restore an older version on my operating system. But the important thing that kind of bit me when I got into this was you cannot restore on, like, for example, I have a PC, I'm up and running, and I have a C drive with all of my apps in my operating system. I cannot fire up Macrium, select the source as being an image, and overwrite a running copy of Windows. It doesn't work. What you need to do is that if you wanted to restore an image, you basically have to run it, say, from your clone. So like in my case, I've got a clone sitting in the cradle on top of my desk. I basically tell Windows, when it starts up, I tell Windows, boot from my clone that's sitting on my desk in the Sabrent cradle. So Windows now is booting from the external clone. I go into Macrium, I select an image off of my external drive, and then I tell it to overwrite my C drive that's located in my Windows PC to be able to restore the Windows PC. So the long and short of this is, to restore a backup, you cannot be running Windows on the same drive that you're trying to back up. Is the point here. So let's quickly go through this. This is essentially the main screen that I showed you earlier. The tab here that basically says existing backups, right? I hope you guys can all see where my mouse is. So this is the tab. When Macrium boots up, it's basically on this tab called Create Backups. But I've selected, let me take a look at my existing backups. And on my machine, I've got a folder here called Macrium Backups, and I've got basically 8 days worth of backups. And in this case, I selected yesterday's backup right here in gray, the 92400. I right-click on that backup, and it pops up this window here. When I right-clicked on it, I said basically restore this image, and it basically says, well, drive that you're going to essentially overwrite. It's saying which of these drives do you want to restore the image. So if I tried to select C drive, I'd be in big trouble because my C drive is currently running Windows. So these are the two. So basically it's saying which destination do you want to restore that image to. And I've got a C drive, I've got a D drive, so I've got to select which one of these that I want to overwrite. And in my case, since I'm running my PC, on the C drive, I can't restore that image back here. I'll have to pick the D drive. Or in one case, if I booted off the cradle on my desk, I could then overwrite the C drive. But this is how you can restore a backup. So the question that Dan asked is, what do we do about being able to power down the cradle? And this is the bonus edition of how to do that. There's a device called Wemo. You can look it up. It's called wemo.com. They have a bunch of products that they sell, but we basically will show you how we basically turn on the cradle just before a backup occurs. And when the backup is done, we turn it off, and essentially disconnecting the clone and the external hard drive from the machine. And here's our famous actor to tell you how it's done, or to show you how it's done.
All right, so as a bonus, we are going to show you a device that Sam discovered that we use to essentially turn on our SATA backup system just prior to backup starting, and then turning it off when backups are done. The device is called Wemo, and here is the app on Sam's phone. It's called Wemo. And why don't you fire up the app, Sam?
You can.
Yeah, that's fine. Just fire up the app. And so what these devices are, they're basically smart programmable power on-off devices, if you wish. Sam has got a heater on his dish network, so when it snows, he can turn it on and defrost the satellite dish. This turns on his SATA drive. And so as you can see, it's currently off. Let me show you the device. So this is the Wemo device itself. And Sam just turned it on, and you can see that the device is now on. But what happens is, what I wanted to show you was that this is the power supply for Sam's SATA drive. So Sam just turned it on, and what we use these devices for is that we programmatically set this device up so that it turns on these external drives just before a backup occurs. So let Sam show us rules. We want to go into rules. And as you can see, he's selected the device, his computer device, and he's got it set up to clone. It turns on at just before midnight, and then it turns off the SATA drive at 1 a.m. Why don't you go into the rule details and show us? All right, so there it is. It turns the computer on daily, and it's got a bunch of abilities to set more complicated rules. This is really nice in the sense that the external drives are not always on. We can basically generate, new times for rule generation. So anyway, we're gonna, Sam can show us how to do this. You can select, let me just do edit here. We're not going to save this, but you can pick what device you want to generate a new rule from. And then you can basically select when you want it to turn on and off. It can do random times. Very, very powerful device. And so the reason we do this with this external SATA drive is that if Sam gets a virus and it wants to start encrypting all of the drives that are connected to this device won't be on, and so therefore the virus won't be able to encrypt the drive. And that's about it.
All right, so that's what we do instead of plugging the thought process on that ransomware is somebody's got to download it, and as soon as they download it, it starts executing. And the thought process here is that, at 3 o'clock in the morning, Sam's not going to be on the computer, and therefore it's safe to do the encryption. This is a sort of an image of the newer devices. You can find, I think Verizon Cellular Network or Verizon stores carries a 3-pack of these for $30 or $40. This is the new version that I have. I buy these for home use. They've got many products. They've got dimmer switches. You can pretty much automate your house with these things. The rule generation is fairly complex. For example, I have a couple of these in some of the bedrooms where between 7 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock in the morning, the lights randomly turn on to make it appear that someone is home. I had one of these plugged into my Christmas tree. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, the Christmas tree would turn on, and at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, it would turn off. Very complicated rules. I mean, I shouldn't say complicated. It's super simple to use, but this is really basically home automation in an Apple style application. Just wanted to show you the app. These are the devices. I hope these are large enough for you guys to see. This guy's got a bathroom fan. He's got a living room light switch, and you can just push these buttons to turn them on and off. They basically calculate how long it's been on, estimated cost of, keeping your lights on, the average time that it's on. These are the rules. You can set the schedule as to when you want it to come on. It's pretty much the same thing where, you want it weekly or monthly or daily, kind of the same sort of scheduling ability that the Macrium software uses. So anyway, this is the Wemo Devices. They've got lots of them. They've even got Ring doorbells, etc. But just to give you an idea, and it worked with Alexa, it works with Apple HomeKit, as well as Google Assistant. And in summary, it's easy to prevent stuff from happening. You could use online drives to save your images too. And that, as Dan pointed out, was another place that's safe to store your stuff, as long as, you don't have all your information exposed and somebody hacks into one of your folders. So, and anyway, in terms of ransomware, it encrypts all attached devices. And so that's one of the the benefits of purchasing Macrium. I can envision for guys that are super, super cheap, they might just get Macrium. They definitely want, you at a minimum want to get a rescue media. And if you want to basically not even go into the whole cradle, you know, the cloning aspect of it, if that wasn't important or if cost was an issue, and just save your images out to the cloud, right? Send it out to Google Cloud or Microsoft OneDrive. And if something happened to your C drive, you basically boot off of the stick, gives you a basic operating system. You go out to the net and you basically restore your C drive from the images that are out on the cloud. That's as dirt cheap as you could possibly be. The software's free. The USB stick, I think a 32 gig USB stick for your rescue media is $7. And if you cared to wait for, you know, moving gigabytes of information down to your PC to restore it, more power to you. So it really is as inexpensive as you want. I prefer having clones after seeing what I had to do working with Sam. I definitely, to me, I got a clone and I got an external drive to save multiple days, weeks, and months of my operating system. So if I had to go back, I could, because it doesn't cost me anything. The one big difference that occurred for me after seeing what Sam went through was I just was doing images. I wasn't doing a clone. And when I realized that I would have to, if I lost my C drive, my operating system, and my apps, I would have to boot off the rescue media. I would then have to get the images or figure out what image I wanted to restore to my C drive and then do the restoral. Whereas right now with my clone, I could stick in yesterday's C drive and I would be okay. My logs, my computer logs, I always upload to Club Log. I always upload to LOTW when I'm done. So even if I had yesterday's copy of an app, it wouldn't matter because all my logs are current. And I use DX Keeper and that automatically backs up to a directory every day. So I would have the latest and greatest logs, computer logs. So anyway, for me, the one thing I learned from Sam, the experience that I had with Sam was to do a clone, and that it was kind of the lessons learned for me.